Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We are so excited that you could join us today for On Radical Awakening. My name is Alex Elliott, and I'm the Senior Manager of Events and Engagement for the Public Programs Department of California Institute of Integral Studies, a nonprofit university in San Francisco. As many of us are descendants of settlers, immigrants, or descendants of those who were forcefully brought to this continent, we, CIIS public programs, must recognize and never forget that our university's building in San Francisco occupies traditional, unceded Ramaytush Ohlone lands. If you're interested in learning more about Native lands, languages, and territories, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca. Now let me first introduce our presenters, Dr. Shefali and Lara Heller, and then we will get right to their conversation. Lara Heller is an executive and life coach and a women's leadership circles facilitator. She works with couples, individuals, and executives and is an IEA accredited Enneagram teacher. In addition to her own coaching practice, she teaches ongoing Enneagram groups and facilitates Enneagram and presence-based trainings for organizations. Lara's background includes an undergraduate degree in psychology, a teaching certificate, and several years as a teacher. She trained in various coaching schools, including getting a coaching certificate from DCI. She's trained in SE trauma work and Hakomi, and her personal development work includes Diamond Heart Approach, Buddhism, and raising 2 children. Dr. Shefali received her doctorate in clinical psychology from Columbia University. Specializing in the integration of Western psychology and Eastern philosophy, she brings together the best of both worlds for her clients. She is an expert in family dynamics and personal development, teaching courses around the globe. She's written 4 books, 3 of which are New York Times bestsellers, including her 2 landmark books, The Conscious Parent and The Awakened Family. Oprah has endorsed her work as revolutionary and life-changing. As an international speaker, she speaks at events around the globe, spreading her message of conscious parenting and mindful living. She also has a private practice where she consults with families and couples. And now it is my absolute pleasure to turn it over to Lara and Dr. Shefali.
Hi, Dr. Shefali. It is
Hi,
such an honor to be here with you.
thank you.
I just finished listening to this incredible book that is read in your voice. If you haven't read this book, read it and buy it and give it to all your friends. When I read your book and listened to it, I had this vision of circles all over the globe of groups studying and reading your book. It really is, it's revolutionary. As I listened to your book, it's riveting, it's deeply moving, it's challenging, and you named that right at the beginning. It's triggering in a lot of ways. It's written concisely, and it's incredibly poetic. Every chapter starts with poetry, which I love. And I felt like every chapter should be a book, that just every chapter you wrote should be a book. One of the things that is so profound about this book is it really is it's strongly founded in Buddhist thinking and teaching, and it's so grounded in not just in modern psychology, but in our wisdom traditions. And I actually, the Buddhists teach that the first tenet of life is that life is suffering.
Mm.
And they give us an 8-fold path to liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that your book
Mm.
was that 8-fold path. It wasn't 8-fold. It was, our life is much more complicated than when the 8-fold path came to be. But it is a path of liberation.
Mm.
And I'd like to start, the beginning of your book starts with a love note to your sisters. And the last few lines, I just want to read them, and I would love to hear you speak to that. You say, "So let's begin. We've got this. Let's enter the ocean together. There is a new horizon on the other side. It's called freedom." So can you speak to this freedom, this path to freedom and liberation in this modern time?
So, we come into this world innocent and naive and unconditioned. We certainly come with a temperament and a genetic blueprint that is undeniable. Every parent of many siblings will say, no, this kid was that and that kid was that. Mm-hmm. So there's this beautiful, unquestionable temperament that we come into the world with. So that's the basic. And then, we come hoping, I think, if I could project onto that infant, to be met, validated, understood, seen for who it is we are, as we are, in our being, in our presence. But tragically, we haven't even left the womb, and our traditions are decided for us, the God we have to believe in, our last name, our family values, how to be a girl, how to be a boy, how to be pretty, beautiful, successful, and happy. So, day 2, and we are already the receivers of heavy projection, conditioning, bias, institutionalization. So this inherent capacity and potential to be free to manifest and embody our immediate and spontaneous essence is dampened, it's marauded, it's abducted right away. And onto us is this influx of a lot of cultural bullshit, but also a heavy dose of our parents' unconscious legacies, because they haven't unconditioned themselves. They haven't healed themselves. So onto us, and that's why I do a lot of work on conscious parenting, is a lot of unconscious garbage from their childhood that they never looked at. So by the time we're, pre kindergarten, we're just in the toaster, in the oven, burnt and seared, and already wretched with all this conditioning of how to be and what to be and how to do life. And there begins the end of freedom. So to then radically awaken, right? I called it a radical awakening, to radically awaken. And none of us will do it until we're much older and wiser, and pain has shred us to many pieces, and the ego is now on the wayside. Where to radically awaken is to uncondition yourself now. So then to deconstruct all the layers of that heavy, metallic, dense indoctrination that we received, and to unpeel each layer and come back to authentic core. And that is the path to freedom. So this book literally takes you on this journey from your personal historical childhood and its projections onto you, to culture's projections onto you, and then to the Buddhist arrival at your essential emptiness. So it's this path to your liberation, but you have to read every damn word, and it's triggering. And it's going to, pop all your fantasy bubbles, and it's going to kill you. So I only recommend it for those who are true seekers and brave. And I know everyone at CIIS is exactly that. So
it is radical. It is challenging. You say to wake up, we need to go beyond desire to be happy, motivated, or positive. And that is such a paradigm shift in our culture, where there's so much about how to be joyous, how to be happy, take this class that will show you how to get inspired, how to have meaning in life. So what do you mean when you say that? You have to go beyond that.
Yeah. Western pop psychology is full of, positivity and affirmations, and I have nothing against them, but we have to kind of go beyond that to get really deep. Because when you superficially crave for something, you are working and operating from a place of voidedness. And the corollary of that is to be deeply connected to your present moment, right here, right now. And when you're deeply connected to your right here, right now, you don't need to be joyous. You don't need to be motivated. You don't need to be positive. You just are filled with presence. Presence has imbued in it acceptance, radical acceptance. And when you have radical acceptance, in that, you have something even more transcendent than joy, if that's possible. It's just this lightness of being. So when one tells people, let's go look for happiness, so to speak, let's take this class on happiness, let's take this class on purpose and meaning, what it's missing is connection to the here and now. And meaning, purpose, eternal abundance and joy will only come from connection to your authentic self, which means that you've deconstructed what culture has put on you and you've let go of all those layers. So happiness isn't something you get or you attain. It is a wellspring of a state of being. It emanates from a deep-rooted sense of connection. So, if you tell people, this class is about how to deconstruct all your cultural layers and to let go of all your conditioning, people won't go to that class. But if you tell them, let's go get skinny and happy, they'll be like, let's go for that class. But that class will not last, because happiness is something you can never attain, right? It's so transient, it's meaningless, it's superficial. Who wants to be happy? You want to be present. You want to be here and now. And if you're sad, you're sad. And if you're angry, you're angry. And like Rumi said, you visit, you take visit from all the visitors with homage, and you allow all the visitors of your emotions to show up, but you don't attach to any of them. And so in the same way, you don't attach to happiness and you don't look for meaning. Meaning is in your being state right here, right now. It's not something you have to become to find.
Yeah, I love that in your book when you speak at the end about meaning, and that it is not something to go get, but it's something to connect with. It's already there. It's the loss of our connection to ourselves that throws us into a place where we don't know what we're meant to be doing or what we're even doing here.
Right. I mean, we're so off the beaten path. We're looking for meaning because we're thinking we have to become something to then be meaningful, because who we are as we are was never validated as good enough. So we are on this quest for purpose and meaning. Purpose is to be here right now.
I have so many quotes from your book, because there's so many things that I just stopped me in my tracks and I would read again and again and take in. But one of them is what you speak to now. Now I see that purpose is not in how things look, but in how I look at things. So powerful, right? It's so small yet so huge. It's everything. It's changing everything.
Right. It's your relationship to your own experience that shapes the experience, right? So your decision that you are a co-creator and you're going to declare accountability for your co-creation changes the game, versus, affixing to a relationship or an experience out there so that it can feed you, right? So women, for example, sometimes, or men, or whoever, whatever you identify as, can forget that they are very powerful co-creators in their life, and forget that accountability, and fall into a false sense of victimhood and martyrdom about them. We women, especially because we're a little lower on the totem pole, right? We've decided that men are on top and white men are right on top, and then the white woman, and we have this like little hierarchy. So we women gain a little bit of satisfaction in externalizing our responsibility and our blame for our own lives. But we women are, anyone on that totem pole is part of that co-creation. Now, of course, some are more oppressed, some are more disadvantaged, 1000%. But we have to take ownership for how we show up in the present moment.
And you speak to accountability. You as the last frontier of really becoming an adult and being liberated. One of the things that for our liberation, as you described so beautifully at the beginning, how when we're born, what happens to us and how we start constricting as we're responding to the world and what the world is wanting from us and what they're projecting on us. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of undigested pain to get to that point of liberation, that point of being able to find that joy, right? There are layers and layers. What is that path for digesting the pain that is in our history, is in our experience, to be able to actually meet this present moment?
Yeah, I mean, part of digestion is integration and then elimination, right? You have to let it go too.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to understand the patterns caused by that trauma, by that pain. We have to have compassion for those who cause that to us, with us, and all the ways that we participate, because now we're adults. And so we participate and carry the legacy of that pain into our present moments, into our future generations. So we have to own it, see it, heal it, grow from it, and release it. And all those stages takes courage, because it's so much easier to just stay passive and stay defined by that pain. Pain is not a fixed entity. The past is not a fixed entity. Each person will recollect it differently. However, it did occur. You cannot, for example, if it was a racist incident or a rape incident, sexual abuse incident in your past, while the past is malleable in your memory, it still did occur. So we have to honor and pay homage to the fact that it did occur. But now what? Now that we're adults, now what? Right? Now comes our accountability for our own perpetuation of that pain. How do I want to continue the legacy of this pain in my life? Do I want to be defined by it? Do I want to be passive in my dependency on it and be a victim of it? Or can I reintegrate, reimagine, rebirth a new sense of self in the now, right? But the first part of the healing is to acknowledge and to own that that was part of our narrative and it got us here. And therefore, it is in its painful way an ode to who we are right now. So we can't say, I wish it never happened. Because without that big incident or many incidents, we would not be the character we are today. So we want the character we are today, but we don't want that pain, right? But pain is part of every human's life, some to a greater degree, some to a less, but it's all subjective. And if we can honor that this pain was part of my very unique narrative, and I am going to celebrate it, and I'm going to own it, and I'm going to now reimagine it, because I won't be held in its clutches forever. And that is the personal accountability and the choice we get to make in the moment, yet having compassion for the tremendous influence of its pain.
Yeah, you say at one point, you talk about hitting rock bottom. And at some point you say that in your practice, you often wait for people to hit that point, not as a voyeuristic activity, but just because you know that that's the point that some shift can happen. What is that shift and I ask you this because our culture really is allergic to pain. And we don't want to sit in the pain. So we're always distracting ourselves. We're moving away from it. We're trying to figure out how to make the pain go away. And you're actually saying something really different. You're saying, be in the pain, meet the pain. And that is a turning point. It's a doorway.
Right. So we're allergic to pain because it forces us to look in the mirror and reconcile our part in the play. And we don't want to do that. So we project the pain outside, right? We drink, we eat, we gossip, we yell, we scream, we gamble, we run away. But if we are brave, we will understand the role of pain in our life, which is to awaken us to our pattern, which we can now break. But that takes courage. So when we understand the messenger that pain can be and take it for its gifts, then we can begin to transmute the pattern until now and lean into it. Because if we don't, and in its place create this false panacea, this false salve, this addiction, the addiction now takes us down another hurtling path of self-destruction. So it's better to just finish this. I used to always say, when I was a young mother, the reason I gave up yelling at my kid wasn't because I was a loving, pious, wise person, because the cleanup after the yell is like worse. Don't you think? You're like, oh my God, now I have to be guilty for 16 days and buy her everything out of my guilt and then eat into the guilt and then like ruin her. And now I have to pay for that. And she'll cry for 16 hours. It's just better to just zip it, just zip it, just go through that 3 minutes. And that's what pain is. It's difficult in the moment, but just go through it, because the cleanup, if you don't, because now you're diabetic, now you're obese, now you're addicted, now you're divorced, now you just had an affair with 10 people and you're like, how did I do that? Because you were running away. So it's just better to go through the pain and see pain as something you have to accept in your life and not resist. So we're always resisting, right? And how do we resist pain? With a coping mechanism, which is terribly dysfunctional. Like I said, you do these other things.
Yep.
So rock bottom is the most glorious moment you have as a therapist, again, with compassion, because you're like, finally. And what are we saying that has finally occurred? What has finally occurred is that all those defense patterns of false coping don't work anymore.
Right.
Like, you've run out of money. Now you're terminally ill. Now the 10 men left you, now you're older. So all the things that you were covering up your pain with now don't work. The pain is demanding to be seen. And rock bottom means that your ego, your egoic patterns of defense and coping, which are false, have fallen apart. And now the person goes, I'm ready to look in the mirror. And now the real work can begin.
Yeah. I think often of that space as a liminal space where you've jumped off the shore into the water, and there you are in the water, and you don't know where the other shore is. You don't know how you're going to get there. You don't know what's there, but you have to do something, and you no longer have the old shore. And it's a very scary place. There's a lot of depression, anxiety that can be in this place, because the ego is stripped away, or certain patterns or ways of being, who we took ourselves to be or how we were. And now what? How do I do life? I don't know how to do life.
Right. And again, it's because we want to do life. But when the ego is stripped apart, there is a moment in time where we can just be before the next iteration appears. And we have to capture that being state and finally realize, oh, I'm just a being. And without my ego, now I can just be here now. And if you haven't developed a practice of solitude or meditation, yes, that is scary. And most people just regress back into another egoic pattern. That's why people who lose weight go back. People who just become healthy slide back. Why? Because that spaciousness that comes with the dropping of the ego is terrifying, right? Everyone wants to go to heaven, but when they taste it here, they're like, no, take me back to hell. Because it is terrifying to encounter your inner spaciousness. I mean, it's the most beautiful thing in the world, but you free float there. You're gliding, you're flying, you're soaring. And for those of us who were shamed and denigrated as children, that soaring spaciousness feels very awkward. You're like, I need to be in a corner feeling like shit about myself because that feels familiar, right? So this moment is often not captured. I often say parents of infants, young parents, that's their moment where the ego begins to drop. But parents are going to the gym and getting a good body back, especially the moms, and they're like running back to work because our culture sets the mom up that way. But there's an opportunity in infancy where you're endlessly breastfeeding, where you're forced to just be present. Right. And most people miss that window again.
You're speaking to something, and you actually just mentioned those words, alone, solitude. I know in my journey of being married and getting divorced, and also in conversations with many, many women, being alone is not something that we learn how to do. And we mostly feel lonely. I mean, we often feel lonely in relationships too, maybe more lonely actually in the relationship than when we're alone. But there's a real fear, and you speak in your book about fear in a lot of different ways, but there is fear about how to be alone. We don't learn how to do that, how to pause, how to be silent, how to meditate. That's not part of our culture. What you're speaking to, that spaciousness, we don't learn that is even a thing.
Yeah, we are conditioned to believe noise and doing and a lot of color and pop and snazz and jazz is the way to be enriched. And it's just completely the opposite. And alone has become synonymous with lonely, but they're two completely different things. You're never really, really lonely. You bought into and subscribe to this idea of loneliness. There's no such thing as loneliness. It's something that you bought into because you have been told that you by yourself are a zero proposition, instead of being taught, like you said, that you by yourself are the most amazing, treasured connection possible. But like you said, we have not been taught that. So when we are by ourselves, because we've been so shamed and demeaned all our lives and punished and scorned by our unconscious culture and parents, that to be by ourselves, it feels like hell because we believed our parents and culture that we are not good enough. So it's understandable that we feel not good enough when we're by ourselves. So it feels not good enough. But it's a lie. Because we were never not good enough. We were always good enough.
And that's not a message that we get because our parents don't feel that they're good enough. So they can't give us that message.
Correct. All of culture is predicated on us not feeling good enough. Otherwise, we wouldn't be buying things and eating so much and all the sugar. And imagine if we felt good enough. That's terrible for the economy, right?
Yeah, you have some moments. You just had me laughing out loud. It's sort of coming back to full circle to this inner parent and inner healer, where you end your book, and you talk about adulting and accountability. And it's so funny. You say most of us are walking, talking toddlers. What can you say something about that? Just the way that we haven't grown up internally, and we feel it's a real feeling.
Right. We look at a toddler and we laugh at his or get in despair of his or her emotional lability, dependency, inarticulate, inability to control emotions. We're just the same. We just can drink a lot of wine, we can smoke a lot of weed, we can drive in our car and leave, we can gossip, we can watch Real Housewives, we can just zone out in adult ways, and we falsely believe that we are grown up. We're just chronologically older, but spiritually and emotionally very, very primitive, very young. I'm just like a 3-year-old, just with a different cover up. So you get to know that really well when you are in a long-term relationship. You're like, okay, this person is acting like a 2.5-year-old, and you're acting like a 3-year-old. So you begin to see that, and then you begin to see that when you have children. You're like, oh my God, who's the real toddler in the house, right? So it just speaks to not having done the work. And what is the work?
Right.
The work is to really grow up from within, which means take charge of your own inner mood and your own inner happiness and your own inner joy and your own inner feelings, and be responsible, because you are your own parent now, and you can't keep waiting for mommy or daddy or the therapist to come. They're not coming. And that is the grown-up moment where you realize no one is coming to rescue you anymore.
So what do you say to women? We do live in a very patriarchal culture and world, and there are a lot of situations where women are mistreated, and you speak to male and female toxicity, which I haven't heard before. And I'd love to hear more about that, how we actually co-create each other. We often speak about the patriarchy and how women are treated, but you're actually saying that there's something else going on there, that we need to be accountable, both men and women.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the patriarchy. There's only something wrong with its toxic parts. Just like if it was a matriarchy, we would be like, oh, it's a matriarchy. But, if it was toxic, there would be a problem. But matriarchies are the same, could be the same as a patriarchy. So people think patriarchies are bad. They're not bad. It's the toxic rigidity of any system that becomes bad. So how is the patriarchy of today toxic? It's because only a few white men on top are able to dominate, and everyone underneath falls, in order. But we women raised those white men. No, those white men were raised by mothers. So there's some role we got to take. We women are not very kind to each other. We are not a sorority. We're not a sisterhood. We are the greatest competitors. We know that when we're getting ready, we are not getting ready for the man. And we're not getting ready for ourselves, even though every woman says, I get ready for myself. It's not true, because when no one's at home, we're not even brushing our teeth, if we can help it. I know I'm not. And I know every woman in COVID loved the fact that she didn't even have to wear a bra, leave alone heels. So we're lying to ourselves, right? So we get ready because we want to be desired, and we want to outcompete the other women. We know that. We know women are looking at us because men are not looking. Men are looking, but they're not really looking at our purses or our, shade of lipstick. They're looking at something far more primal, So we have it all twisted, and we suffer the most, right? In our competitiveness, in our anti-aging zeal, in our desire to be eternally youthful. Who is suffering? We are, right? And we are cruel to each other. We judge each other more than anyone. And each time we do, we subscribe to the toxicity of the patriarchy that we're so upset about, right? But we have to take ownership. Who's buying all the makeup? Who's buying the high heels? Every woman knows they're not comfortable, but we're acting like they are. At least we need to say, I wear it because I want to feel sexy, and I want you to tell me I'm sexy. Can you tell, we should wear, can you tell me I'm sexy? Because that's what we're saying. But we're acting like it's our authentic self to be tottering in high heels. This is where we lie, So I've begun saying, when I wear high heels, I'm terribly uncomfortable. This is ridiculous, but I'm so insecure. I need you to tell me I look beautiful in these heels. That's why I'm doing this, right? So we're not owning the insecurity. So then we're acting secure. The other woman who is in touch with her insecurity, she goes, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. And so she acts secure. Then her daughter looks at her and goes, this is a load of bullshit. I don't want to wear this nonsense and cover my face and wear a mask and, do 10,000 things, but everyone's looking so secure. So it must be me who's crazy. Let me cover it up. So the mask keeps going on, and we're all in this emperor's got no clothes charade, and nobody is owning up to it, right? So we women need to take ownership for how we're not nice to ourselves. We're not lovely about our bodies. We do not accept our bodies. We are terribly insecure and judgmental. And we blame the men. No, we cannot blame the men for this. And the men, they're suffering too, because no one understands, for example, the pressures they have to be providers, right? We're like, please, Dr. Shefali, right? All the women would be rolling their eyes at me. Please, do not tell me my husband is working harder than me, right? And we're so like separatist about it, I'm the first one to complain about men, but I know I'm being separatist. I'm not acting like it's reality. So men and women have a huge abyss, males and females. And I'm just talking strictly biological male, biological female, but you can identify how you like, have a huge abyss between them, and they don't understand each other. So, and we women, feel victimized by them, but they are suffering too. How many women go up to their men and ask them, are you having enough sex? Are you being pleased enough? Are you being sated? But very quickly we'll tell the men, I'm not feeling emotionally connected. You never talk. Go read some poetry, right? But when the table has to be flipped, we are resisted, right? We were like, no, don't be a baby, right? Just the other day, a client came to me saying that her husband wanted 4 times the sex that she was giving in a month. She's like 5 times, 6 times. He's such a baby, Dr. Shefali. And I said, see, but if you were saying that you're emotionally disconnected from your partner and he's not connected, all of us would take you seriously. So you see, like in very typical ways, we put them down, we emasculate them, we don't understand their worlds. And for sure, they don't understand ours. So, but we are not even honest with our sisters. We're all lying to each other, right? We're showing off on Facebook about our amazing children and, lying, because we all want the accolades and we all want the validation. So in these ways, we perpetuate the rigid oppressiveness that surrounds this culture, but we blame the men, but we're participating in it.
Mm-hmm. It's very provocative what you're suggesting here, and I'm sure this is probably triggering for some people. And I really appreciate you bringing this out and talking also about the perspective of men and men's sexuality. You speak about the cheater, right? That how we say men, we call them that, if they cheat. And you make a suggestion about what would it be like to be able, as a man, to say, I'm attracted to your friend, or I'm attracted to this other woman. And is that something that you feel would change the balance? It would help men feel more heard and women more seen?
Well, he'll be beheaded, but if he had the courage and the woman had the courage, and we're talking strictly, I'm so aware that people are very sensitive about using male and female and woman and man. So I'm just talking very prototypically and, very simplistically. But of course, there's so many identifications you can identify away. But just strictly speaking, the prototypical male, heterosexual male, has been really, and the homosexual male maybe too, I don't know, has been labeled, if he's a philanderer, as a cheater. So women suffer that, right? When you think that your partner has cheated, you automatically don't like that person. You judge that person. You've created an abyss. You suffer. I was cheated on. I was betrayed. You wear the mantle of despair. What if we began to understand, and I say this for parents with children who say, my child lies to me, in the same way, that no one wants to lie. This beautiful essence that's my partner, this beautiful essence that's my child, or even you, when we've lied, and every human has lied. We don't want to lie. We don't want to be sneaking like a 2-year-old into somebody else's sheets and then zipping up our pants and coming back at night. But to just demean the other person as a cheater without understanding their reality, is really not evolved. And we don't have to be evolved. You know, many women are like, F that, I don't want to be evolved. I'm throwing him out of the house. Good for you. You're at that level, do it. I, in my life, you know, want to cry my tears if that happened to me, but then I want to understand what's going on and what led you to feel so unsafe that you felt you had to lie to me, and how can I help you, and how can I not judge you? I may not want to be with you anymore, but can I understand you? And many males, at least those who have a high sexual drive, feel very limited in a very rigid, oppressive, you know, taboo-like environment that our current sexuality is bathed in. And they suffer and they need to have an expression, but women will not allow them to express. How could you say you found my best friend attractive? Because she's just pretty like you, right? We will not allow it, right? I tell all my male clients, you know, wear your shades to the beach. You know, why would you like not cover your eyes and then your wife is looking at your eyeballs? Wear your shades and enjoy your view. But we, you know, we look at it as so demeaning to us. We're beautiful, aren't we beautiful? Like, I find women beautiful and I'm straight. So I don't know, we have this very purist like morality about us because sex is so taboofied and in the closet. And we're just not okay with appreciation of our naked beauty. And men suffer because they're going to look, you know, they're highly visually stimulated as beings, as biological genetic beings. You know, they are primarily more the hunters and the providers. And so their visual stimulation is on. And then when we, you know, when they save us from the praying mantis or the, you know, the eagle that's about to snatch our nose, we're like, wow, you have such good eyesight and coordination. But when those eyes look at any other female form that's not ours, God forbid, then we persecute them. I mean, it's just so silly. But I understand females because we've been conditioned that once they get married, you know, you put that ring, right, that's it. It's the end of all appreciation of any other female form. And you must only have eyes for me because now I control you. You know, so I talk about marriage as an institution and ideas of love and very provocative.
Yes, very provocative. And you speak about marriage or that contract as a life sentence, as a way that it could be a life sentence.
Well, it is a life sentence. You and I are both divorced. When we broke the life sentence, everyone looked at us like we were broken, like we had failed, you know. I remember a woman came to me who was not in a good marriage, whatever that is. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear you've been divorced. I'm like, who are you sorry for? So I turned my head. But no, really, I was like, she's sorry for me? No divorced woman is ever sorry. Like when we make the decision and we cross to the other side, there's no sorry. But culture projects that because a good marriage is one that is defined by longevity. Not by growth, not by matching, not by attunement, not by evolution, not by curiosity and adventure. It is defined by longevity. Doesn't matter if you both never see each other. I know people right at this moment living in different apartments, different cities, different bedrooms, but they're married. Right? So to each his own, to each their own. But let's not project that those who quote unquote break the contract are in any way lesser than or failures or broken.
Yeah. What would you consider a mature love, a mature relationship? How would you define that? I think there's it's much more about spiritual development, about, I know for myself, spending all that time and learning how to be alone, I no longer need someone to complete me or need something from someone else. It's more what would enhance my life? How do I want to be met? So I'm wondering, how would you, for anyone who's listening, as they're trying to discern, are they in a mature love? Is this love, can it evolve, this relationship? What would be the signs for this is a good relationship? It's moving in a direction of liberation. It's on the eightfold path.
Well, the first awareness you have as you awaken is that life is lived in the moment, and you no longer need a contract. You don't no longer need a validation by community. You no longer need a life sentence, and a promise. You give up the promise. You're like, I don't need a promise. But you only get to this wisdom when you've been through the attachments and you realize that those attachments didn't make me happier, more joyous, or more abundant. They bogged me down. They were claustrophobic, and I lost my authenticity. Every institution robs you of your authenticity because you are sacrificing your inner knowing to belong to the institution and follow its prescriptions. All religions are institutions. Marriage is an institution. The way we work is an institution. The way we are educated are all institutions, right? We don't see marriage and love as an institution, but it is. Sex is an institution here, right? And their taboos and their rules. And if you don't follow, you will be ostracized. So a mature love understands that it's only right here, right now. A mature love understands that the inner landscape must be tended and bloomed by the self. And the others can come and, sprinkle a little water once in a while and turn us toward the sun if we forget where the direction is, but they are not here to complete us. There's no such thing as completion anyway, only constant evolution. So mature love has wisdom to understand that we are mirrors of each other, and we are, here as allies of our growth, and we can move in and out of life with fluidity, and maybe out of each other's lives, and come back and move again, and mute and transmute and press mute. And so it's not one for all, and one this way or one that way. It's not either or. It's very fluid. Mature love is very fluid. It's very much about adding value, right? Growth. And if the person is not adding growth, we really don't need them to give us meaning. So we don't identify with that relationship when it's mature. When it's immature and unconscious, it's out of need, desperation, dependency, identification, attachment. You need the other person to be there for you to feel whole. You need the other person to look at you so you feel good. You need the other person to behave in your prescribed way so that you feel in control. Mature love begins to let all that go.
It's beautiful. I'm just taking that in, right? If we could all show up in that way in this world, right? In this way where we can account for ourselves and not be reactive. And it's interesting, I know you use this word authenticity a lot, authentic, the authentic self. And, in Buddhist teachings, there's no self, right? What can you describe to everyone here what an authentic self? How do you know you're actually showing up from an authentic self, right? I have clients come to me and say, well, my feelings got really hurt and I got angry and I let them know about it. And I felt like I was being authentic because I was showing my feelings. I was saying my truth. What would you say to that in terms of authentic self and more of our reactive self?
Yeah, many people mistake their feelings just because they're having feelings, and their reactions just because they're having the reaction as authentic. To be really authentic takes a lot of deconstruction, because you have to understand for yourself if you are operating out of your ego mask or you are truly operating out of your inner space, right? The opposite of ego is emptiness. So the authentic self is one that understands that there is nothing they really need to do except be connected here. And they don't get ensnared When we are ensnared in a reaction, we're not in our authentic self. We are in our little child ego self. We are never, when we are reactive, ever, 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 we should never, ever, ever call that authentic. We need to call, oh, holy fuck, that was my big fat ego self. So people mistake authenticity. I was authentic. I gave her a piece of my mind. No, you were just, vomiting your ego. Authentic self is silent. It's powerful. It's whirring on its own sovereignty. It doesn't need the other. All the rest is ego. All the rest is ego. So authentic self is a liberated self that doesn't get tethered in the present moment. Very hard to achieve. But the only way to achieve it, or to taste it, right, is to know the difference between that and your ego reactive self.
What is the somatic experience of that authentic self, like the felt sense, just for our listeners, how do you identify, you discern, especially if you're not familiar with that, and you think you're being authentic because you're speaking what you think is your truth? I think there's a real somatic felt sense to our true nature, our true self, when we come from that place.
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's not urgent,
It's beautiful.
It's not desperate.
That's beautiful.
It's like, I need to say it right now.
Yeah.
That's not your authentic self, because your authentic self is timeless. It's spacious. It's expansive. It doesn't need it done right now. So every time I want to react to my kid and I think it needs to be said right now, I realize that only my anxiety needs to be contained right now, right? So my ego wants to contain my inner anxiety. But when I'm in my authentic self, I don't have urgency because I'm whole and complete. I'm like, I'll teach you the lesson in like 7 days and then I forget, right? So, oops, lesson has not been learned, but I don't care, right? Ultimately, we're trying, parents especially have so much urgency. If I don't teach this lesson now, my kid will be a loser, a drug dealer, and get pregnant by 12, right? We're like, no, I have to teach this. Say please right now, right? And we're saying say please when they're 22. Can you say please? Because the lesson never gets learned if it's not meant to be learned anyway, right? But we think we have the jewels of wisdom, must be said right now. Nothing needs to be said right now. And really nothing. The earth is going to keep moving, even if you don't say your precious words right now, right? So the authentic self is never urgent.
Wow. That's really powerful. I'm just to feel into that because it's so somatic, right? It is really a way that we can ask ourselves, am I really in that place? And we can feel whether we feel like we have to make a movement, we have to do the thing or say the thing, or can we just be, as you were describing
and allow.
before? That's beautiful.
So it's calm. So you're in reactivity through the pacing of through the burst of the volatility, through the right. And how do we pause in that moment and go, I'm anxious. I'm anxious. And when I'm anxious, I know, do not talk when you're anxious, because anxious gets converted, anxiety gets converted into control, right? What we are anxious here, but out of our mouth comes control, right? So, I have learned in the hard way to tap in and go, wow, I'm anxious. I'm anxious. And when I'm anxious, I'm unstable. So I need to go take care of this being, which is me, before I spew out in some sort of toxic vitriol onto others who are unsuspecting, right? So it's a tapping in, like you said. You have to become aware of how your body is speaking to you.
Yeah, and that urgency, it could be sort of that movement, but sometimes urgency actually is a withdrawing, right? To just name that too. It's not always a movement that is volatile. The withdrawing is also a way that we respond and react.
Yeah, I like that. Yep, very nice.
Yeah. I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, and your story about the women in your life and the men in your life when you were young was so touching. I actually teared up listening to your experience. And it that lesson that we learn, and you really spoke to that beautifully from women, that we shouldn't compete with women, right? Or we shouldn't be better than. And I know from working in corporations with mainly with women, that one of the most painful places for women, sometimes consciously, but often not, is the competition with other women. It's not the patriarchy. It's not what's happening with the men. It's actually their own competition with each other. And I know, you also speak to how women really, we need women to heal the world in this mothering, nurturing way. And unless we have a community of sisterhood and break that, we won't be able to do that, because we need each other. We need the sisterhood, the support. We need to elevate each other. So what do you recommend to women that are listening, or men, or anyone who's listening? How do we start undoing that between women, the competition that women suffer from each other?
Yeah, it's difficult, but we have to start showing up more and more as ourselves. So either, be more honest about your own experiences. Don't pedestalize yourself. Don't put yourself on this, on this air of superiority. Come down to earth, be humble. If you're all made up and dolled up, say, don't act like it's how you rolled out of bed, right? Own it, claim it, talk about your insecurities, because when you do, other women open up and feel relaxed. But if you, have this air of perfection, that is just such a turnoff. And it really sets off a domino effect in other women to feel that they have the pressure to be perfect, and, all women who are trying to be perfect on social media, you see how this makeup transforms them, and they need to say, don't think I'm doing this because I'm perfect. I'm doing this because I'm insecure. And if they call it what it is, then do what you want, but don't pretend like you woke up like this. Say, I'm so insecure and I'm suffering from this, but I'm working hard on loving myself. And so till then I have to plaster myself with a lot of paint, right? Rather than just showing up as the painted doll version, and everyone's going, wow, how do I look like that? We don't see the behind the scenes. And it could be with your motherhood. It could be with your partnership. How many women talk about, my sex with my husband sucks, or, I'm sick of being a mom and I'm tired and I don't know what I'm doing. So when we begin to talk like this, we give each other permission to be real.
Being authentic. You one of the most powerful for me personally moments in the book was, you said, the true self can't be wounded, just our ego, and we can heal and parent the part that hasn't been parented. I'm so sorry, we had a little technical glitch. And Dr. Shefali, do you want to finish that thought?
Yeah, I was just saying that it's our conditioned self that identifies with its identifications that is fragile. The true self is never broken. The conditioned self that believes it needs to be skinny or young or Jewish or Muslim or rich, that when that self is attacked, it falls apart. The true self can never fall apart because it doesn't hold on to any identification. So you can't poke it.
The true self cannot be wounded.
Mm-hmm.
It's so powerful if we take that in, that reality that is available to us. So I'm going to move into question and answer. So I'm seeing this is a great question. You make it sound so easy. How do we break down our defenses and shed our conditioning to become radically awake?
Yeah, no, it's not easy at all. You have to go on a journey, on a quest, on a deep internal sojourn to find these truths. You read books like mine if you're interested, you take courses. I tell every client of mine, you will not even begin to become aware until a year into this quest. So there are pathways though, right? So I give a pathway in my book. I have a course that goes with it. I have so many courses with me or with some other teacher that you resound with. And you take those courses and you learn this language, and then you become better and better at speaking it, and your thinking changes because you're educating yourself in a completely new way.
I think one of the things that you mention in your book is community. I actually grew up in Israel on a kibbutz, which I think you mentioned in the book. And we really do need a community of people. And I know from growing up in Israel on a kibbutz and living here, there's such a lack of community. We need that support also to do this work. We can't do it alone. We need our sangha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to find your people. So I didn't have my sangha and I had to create it. So I created a summit where people came every year. And actually the next one is in October if people are interested in coming, because I needed people to speak my language. So I got them to me and spoke with them, and now they speak it back to me. And that's what you have to do with intention and deliberation. And surround yourself with people who you respect and whose thinking you admire, so that you can lean into that more and more.
Yeah, you speak, it just reminds me in your book, you speak about the queen, becoming the queen and making the choices of who you want to be around, making those conscious choices.
Right. Most of us just get led by life instead of leading our lives. And we need to curate our lives with deliberation. We need to find those spaces with intention and fill our space and our mental energy with the right vibration and frequency. Otherwise, we're going to be polluted and wonder why we're sick and debilitated. It's because we're just allowing anybody to come in the door and not with an agency, choosing very, very carefully who you want in there and what energy and what level of consciousness you want in there.
Yeah. I think you call it the consciousness quotient, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Can you say something about that? I was really struck by that when you're interfacing with someone and trying to make choices for yourself, who you want in your life that actually supports you to evolve. You don't treat everyone the same. You actually look at that quotient.
Right. You have to discern what level of growth people have endured. Have they done the inner work? Have they healed their past patterns? Or are they just going to vomit all their crap onto you? Do they even understand what their patterns are? Have they deconstructed the matrix? Have they understood the lies that culture tells us? Or have they simply subscribed and hook, line, and sinker bought into it? Because the more they buy into culture's lies, the more they'll project it onto you. So you get to really choose who you want in your life, and people give up this power. I gave it up for my entire life till I was in my mid-40s, and I had a radical awakening. I didn't even know I could choose. I just thought whoever came.
A question from Sana. How can I stop people pleasing? Because I do it on such an unconscious level. I don't even know I'm doing it, right? And that's actually true for so many of us, that we have patterns and we actually don't know we're in a pattern. You say in your book, which you say it was one of your biggest awakenings, that we live a pattern, not a life. It was very strong statement. I think it's true for most of us, or all of us, until we awaken. So how do you do this work when you don't even know that you're in a pattern?
Right. Beautiful question. So you don't know till the pain begins to gnaw at you and you become burnt out and exhausted and resentful and angry, and you're frothing at the mouth and going, what's wrong with me? Because you then realize you're spending all your energy from your ego, and your ego is always hungry. So if your ego mask is to be a people pleaser, it will always make you please people and abdicate your own sovereign power to the point where you're, puddle on the floor. So you realize that you're in something toxic when you're exhausted all the time, resentful, burnt out, forgetful, chaotic, disorganized, never have enough time, always tired, complaining. Then you go, hey, what pattern am I in? And you realize, oh, I said yes there, and then I said yes there, and then I did that for somebody, and I have to recover from this pattern. So that's the first step, is awareness of the toxicity of this pattern in your life. And then the second thing is to understand that you're doing this people pleasing not because you're such a lovely person. You're doing this people pleasing because you're a hungry person. You want something from them back. Otherwise, you would not please. You're doing it because you want what I call the triple threat. You want validation, approval, or praise. You want some sort of emotional payback. Otherwise, you would not do it. And that's why you're burning out, because you're like, okay, let me try harder. You keep trying to get something. So I tell all the people pleasers, please don't think you're a lovely person. You're actually extremely self-centered, because you have an agenda in people pleasing. You're doing it not because you're authentically like loving and abundant. You're doing it when you're burnt out, stressed out, and you're doing it because it's your pattern, it's your addiction, and you want an emotional payoff. And when I say that, because people pleasers are typically very sweet people, they're like horrified. Oh, I'm such a selfish person. I mean, I'm like, whatever it takes to get you to stop doing it. Check in with yourself. Is this coming from a need? Is this coming from fear? Because if I don't do it, then everyone's going to be upset with me. Or is it coming from, I'm free, I'm abundant, okay, I'll do it. Or is it automatic knee-jerk fear that if you don't do it, then the people will be like upset with you, will abandon you, will not love you as much? And most of us do it out of fear and a knee-jerk reactivity, because that's just our habit, our addiction.
I can imagine that that's probably really hard for some people to hear what you just shared, because often if you're a people pleaser or of service to others, you have an identity, an ego identity, of course, that you're a nice person, that you're a caretaker, that you're nurturing, that you're a nice person. And to actually, and I think that's what you're saying, to suddenly wake up to another reality of where it's coming from, can be really startling.
Right. But it's not about even bothering with labels of nice. It's just going, how can I step into my courage to be real? Like, if I'm tired, I'm tired. If I don't have crawling infants who I have to take care of, or the sick or the needy or the elderly, a dependent animal, maybe. If it's not that, then why am I jumping backwards and killing myself for this other person? There must be something unhealthy in me that needs to do this, because most people pleasers are burnt out. They're burnt out because they ignore their own body's signals and override their knowing and pretend to be always available, always competent, always generous. And no human can be that. So they are living a lie. And yeah, it's hard to hear, but it's the way you can save yourself and snap out of your madness and learn to say, you know what? No, I can't do it. It took me forever to practice, because the minute I used to say no, I felt such an internal fear of retribution. because I was conditioned to be a very good girl. And it took me years, and I'm still not good at it. You know, that feeling of anxiety that comes up when you say no, because you're waiting for the fallback, and to rest powerfully and go, no, I'm not saying anything wrong. You know, no is a bad word for the people pleaser, but it's really a very vital word that they need to start practicing.
Yeah. I'm laughing at you saying snapping out of the madness. It's snapping out of the madness and the addiction, right? It's that addiction or personality that is addicted to certain kinds of behaviors. I'm also really hearing that, again, that there so many of these signals of these patterns are, we can check in with our bodies, our somatic feeling. And I think in your book, you call it ease, right? When you're awake, when you actually feel you wake up, there's an ease. And I think that's so somatic. And that is such a place that we sometimes forget we even have bodies. But we can go to and check in with ourselves. Oh, you know, I feel at ease now, or I'm not. I'm in dis-ease, and you talk about that too.
Yeah, you know, a natural, authentic way of being is to be at ease and flow. But you know, we teach our children at a young age that life is suffering in not the Buddhist way, but in, you know, in the very pessimistic, lack-based way that we live. And that you have to, you know, work hard and become something and achieve something. And so we do, and we don't know how to rest easy. You know, it can be done tomorrow. It can be done next year. There's no urgency again, you know, and any sense that there's urgency comes from deprivation, inner impoverishment, and we need to let that go.
It's so powerful, that urgency, that, because it's, for me, it's so somatic. I can feel that, and it's actually a way that I can check in with myself, what's happening, because there's an urgency to react, to do something, and opposed to that ease and spaciousness that you so beautifully describe. There's a question here from Amanda, which actually really ties into its perfect timing to the somatic piece. Every time I try to meditate, I feel panic, such as breathing heavily. So I stop the meditation. What can I do about this?
So again, when we meditate, we also can get attached to an ideal of, you know, I need to be Zen, I need to be calm, I need to be at ease. But the beauty of meditation is to observe whatever comes up with acceptance, with flow, with non-resistance. So if she's having this intense breathing, she needs to watch it and not identify with it, and then not say, oh my goodness, what's happening? Oh, this can't be good. Let me give myself a C grade. You know, the point of meditation is to be in non-resistance and allow for everything that shows up and allow it to leave. But when we begin to panic, you know, oh, why am I breathing so hard? We will breathe harder, right? So to observe and to allow and to have non-resistance is to just be the watcher. Meditation teaches us to be the observer, the watcher, the non-doer. And that is the part of the secret sauce of this wisdom, to get back into your inner power, in your inner being state, in your inner flow.
So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we can come to a close. Let's see. So what aspect of being a mother should continue when the child is an adult? For example, should the mother be transforming into a role of friend or something else? And then there's another part. What aspects of being child should continue towards the mother as an adult child? What is healthy for a mature adult to rely upon or expect from their parent, and a mature parent to rely upon or expect from their adult child?
Great question. You know, if the mother is in her wholeness and her power, she will release her babies very, very easily. You know, she will let them go into their adulthood and not have the tentacles of mother. Right. The other day, a 70-something mother on Mother's Day got so upset, and she told me about it. She said, my kids didn't even call me on Mother's Day. And I laughed at her and I said, you know, when are you going to give up that job, that role? Like, when are you going to retire from being the mom? And she looks at me like with horror, like, never. Why would I ever do that? So we have this, again, timestamp, times life sentence that, you know, you have to be identified as this role for the rest of your life. And I strongly believe that we need to retire ourselves. And of course, you can do that at any age, but when your children are energetically ready to leave, and you will see that. My daughter's 20, she's energetically detaching, and I'm very happy to release. And I want to be done with this role of mother. I want to become ally and friend and support. And, you know, there's no dependency anymore, because now the child needs to be their own parent. And it's the mother who needs to be the mother and needs to be needed that keeps holding on with control. The mother who's like, okay, I've done my job. I did amazing. Now it's your turn to mother yourself. Those mothers are those who are actualized and don't need the identification of that role, and don't need their daughters to go, oh, I call my mother every day. You know, the mother is like, no, you call your friends every day and I'll call my friends every day, you know, and that's the sign of powerful motherhood, that I've done my job and I release you now. But we can't let go of it. You see, we want the children to be eternally dependent on us, and that is toxic and unhealthy.
So that was our last question, and I'm wondering, what are your final thoughts that you would like to share with everyone?
Just that, you know, life is only lived in the now, and any of your internal talk that's based in lack and shame and fear is a lie based on your ego and culture's ego and your parents' ego. And therefore, you don't have to any longer buy into it. You can literally discard all those thoughts and self-criticisms and self-loathings as soon as you wake up to your own authentic self.
And that is Dr. Shefali giving us permission to do that and inviting us to do that. Thank you so much, Dr. Shefali. It was really so enlightening to listen to you and to be with you today.
Thank you for being a fabulous interviewer, and thank you to CIIS for hosting, and to all who listened.
And now, Alex, you can come back, and Alex will give us the final words.
Thank you all so much for attending today. We hope you'll join us for more of our upcoming talks and workshops. This conversation was recorded, so if you'd like to watch it again or share it with your community, it will be available on our YouTube channel at this same link and later on our Facebook page. We will also feature this talk on our podcast, which you can find at CIISpod.com or by searching CIIS Public Programs on your favorite podcast app. Thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.